Folks, welcome back. We're here again for the Friday Flows. Today's episode, folks, what we're going to be covering is actually an area that we haven't really done an episode on, but in conversations that I have about times, it's an area that consumes a lot of time for teams, and actually there's not really huge amounts of automation deployed in this area. And that's usually around software access requests and management of users internally who has access to what under certain timeframes. So that's what we're going to be covering today. I think before I hand over to our guest, Conor Dunne, as you all know. But what I want to say here is, within a process like this, there's two ways you look at it. The first thing is like, what does it look like manually? The second thing is, what is the benefit of actually automating it? So with something like managing access requests and managing users, for example, obviously, to handle one or two of those requests is fine if you're doing it manually. But obviously, it can be very time consuming. And when you're in a large organization, for example, where there's a lot of requests coming at you, not only is that time consuming, but when you've got time consuming tasks at volume, then it's prone to human error, right? So that's where you start posing the question of, okay, can we automate this process? I think another benefit of what I've seen customers use times for use cases like this is that once they have it automated, it's like obviously you have a standardized way of doing it, but there's an audit trail there. And obviously that helps from compliance point of view. But by removing the human error and obviously streamlining something, there's improvement there from a security point of view as well. So looking forward to getting into this with you. But Conor is joining us today. Conor, how are we doing?
Not too bad. How are you doing, Cameron?
Not too bad, my man. I'm not too bad at all. Yeah, Conor, let's jump in and take a look at what we're working with today.
Yeah, so if we have a look at the story, this is one we've had in the library for a while now. We've had this since before cases and records came out in Times, so it's something that can very easily be put in here. But this kind of just shows the general concept of it. So as you're saying, this is for just-in-time access requests. It's a bit of a funny one because the way it's working is this is acting as a central hub for requesting these access requests. And we are using a sent story heat down here to and here to first grant the permissions if it's been approved, and then to revoke it again if it's been rejected. Or sorry, once it expires. All the management of the actual just-in-time access request is actually done per tool in other stories. So if we have a quick look over here, this is what a story looks like for access request to CrowdStrike. So the way these work is a simple input from a webhook where we're getting the user details, and if we find the user, we're checking if we're providing access or revoking access. And if we're providing access, we give it to them. And then once it expires, we take it back away. So if we go back into the main story and have a look at it. So if we have a look at the main story again, um, as we can see here, before we can actually make an access request, we're going to have to register our new application. So if we open this page here, we can create our CrowdStrike application. CrowdStrike. I've got a Slack channel here for the approval, and the story name is this story back here, our CrowdStrike just-in-time access. But one thing we're doing that's a bit unique is we have to do it as if we're calling a sent story now. And if I just copy the list of roles for CrowdStrike in here, we can have a look at what this looks like. So now that this is submitted, we can open our just-in-time access request. Ooh, that has not saved yet. So this is here just adding our application here to a resource. So here we can see we've got our application, our approval, our story name, and again, our list of roles.
And Connor, for
Now,
anyone that hasn't necessarily seen resources in action, just
mhm.
explain simply what we're doing with a resource there and what it is.
Yes. So what a resource is just a way of storing information in times that you can then call on later. So this could be a URL or a Slack channel ID. So you might have your security Slack channel ID, And instead of copying and pasting, hard coding that ID in every place you go, you can make a resource for that, store that information, and then all you need to do to refer to it is open up a pill and type in resource dot, and then here is a list of resources I have on this tenant here. So if we go to, it is our git config, here we can see that's the resource, and we can refer to that then in other stories.
Awesome. Great stuff.
But yeah, so looking again at our access requests, as you can see, CrowdStrike is now loaded. So if we submit CrowdStrike, we can select what role we want. I only want this for an hour. And when I hit submit, that's the access request gone in. This will actually send here an approval request was made for CrowdStrike. I can approve or deny. I'll deny this because I don't need access in the moment. But I've now received an email saying, hey, your access request has been denied. Down here is kind of a bit of a funky part of the story, though. Actually, I might submit another access request and just approve it so we can have a look at what it looks like. So if we just go for an hour as a Discover analyst, and I approve that here. Here we go. What we're doing here is we're actually dynamically calling a census story. So again, what we have here is this is our times page. This is the service that we're actually looking for. And we are then looking up that story name that we submitted in this JIT config. So, and then we're running this story.story name. If we wanted to run a sense store normally, what you do is here, you'd just type in your story name. So JIT access request or sorry, it'd be story dot, if I can spell, dot CrowdStrike JIT access. Again, this is what we submitted in this config here. And by using a GET request on this story, our GET function, we're able to call a story depending on previous inputs. So it just shows usually we use functions on previous events, on previous on resources, but you can use your functions on credentials as well as those story IDs, and just to open up your mind of other things you might be able to do. And then running through the rest of the story, as we said here, we've got our delay. So once that delay that we access details we put in there, after that's done, this will trigger again and just revoke any permissions. So yeah, that's the base story, a bit of a more complicated technical one with this sense story, but hopefully
Absolutely.
it opens a few minds.
Yeah, no, big time. I think it really shows, as you said, like it's good getting into the weeds and seeing how these things are configured, but also showing the ability of branching logic within tines and to, build something that on the surface probably looks, quite simple and how it looks on the storyboard, but there's a lot going on there. And obviously a tremendous amount of value in having that built out and automated. I really think the use of pages here shows the versatility at times. And as I said, like for anyone watching this that I've had conversations with on this kind of use case, I'd definitely be importing that into your community edition and having to play around with it. But yeah, Conor, great stuff, man, and always a learning experience when we have you on.
Cheers, Cameron.
Good stuff. All right, folks, if you enjoyed that, let us know. Like and repost to your network. Obviously, if there's any other technology or use cases you're interested in seeing, make sure you pop them in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching. I'll link the community edition to test out use cases like this one from the library as well. Check us out in the next one. Cheers.